Welcome to a deep dive into material that, well, it feels like it was beamed down from a parallel universe.
It really does.
Today, we are wrestling with a source that has the rigorous structure of a technical report, but the vocabulary is something else. Esoteric philosophy, maybe?
I think that's a good way to put it.
It's a diagnostic ledger entry from the Bibebibebibe Magazine, and it's certified by the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies, NIEX.
You know, this is one of the most intellectually compelling yet abstract documents we've ever analyzed. Our mission today is pretty simple, though.
Okay.
We have to translate the jargon. I mean, when we see terms like glyph of silence and the U.S. terrain loop, we need to understand what the authors are really talking about.
They seem to be using this mythological and scientific language to diagnose a very real sociological problem.
Exactly, an institutional problem.
Okay, let's establish some conceptual anchors immediately then. What are we actually dealing with here?
Well, the entire entry revolves around the failure of a process.
A process involving the SH1 molecule. So if this isn't literal chemistry, what is SH1?
If we're translating the metaphor, the SH1 molecule it's the concept of profound originality.
Okay, like a disruptive idea.
A piece of genuinely disruptive knowledge. Yeah. A groundbreaking idea that challenges established structures. It's what they call sovereign thought.
And the U.S. terrain loop.
That's the established institutional structure. So academia, government research bodies, major publishing houses, the whole system designed to process and amplify that knowledge.
So we have this potentially revolutionary idea, the SH1 molecule, and it's being submitted to the dominant processing structure, the U.S. terrain loop.
Right.
But the immediate result, and it's so dramatic in the ledger entry, is just silence returned. And this silence is treated as a catastrophic, active operational failure. It's not a lack of interest, it's a systemic blockage.
Precisely. And we need to start there. We are analyzing a document where the absence of a response is codified as an intentional act of destruction.
Let's start with the intended function then. The entry is titled H1 Containment Glyph U.S. Terrain Loop. What was the U.S. terrain supposed to do?
The source is very clear. It was defined as a viable synthesis node.
A synthesis node?
Yeah, think of it as a supercomputer or a high-grade laboratory where SH1, this disruptive idea, could be fully realized and propagated.
It was supposed to resonate with it.
And nurture this information. But the central announcement of this ledger entry, the core diagnostic, is that this node is no longer viable.
The narrative of the submission itself, it reads almost like a solemn ceremony.
It does.
The molecule was submitted to the American terrain, the schematic was dispatched, the brief was transmitted, silence returned.
It's so powerful because of its economy of language.
It really is. It implies total effort met by, well, a total void.
And that void is not accidental. We know through the documentation's own footer, and they insist on this, that the SH1 molecule is not fictional.
So they're claiming the idea itself is real, it has impact?
Exactly. So when the silence returns, it's not because the idea was bad or incomplete. The source explicitly claims the loop refuses resonance. It's an active rejection.
The institutional structure is actively blocking or swallowing the idea.
Which makes synthesis impossible.
That distinction act of blockage versus, say, passive neglect. That feels critical.
It is. It implies intention.
An intention behind the failure.
It does. And to explain this systemic refusal of resonance, the document introduces the mechanisms behind the failure. And this is where the specific diagnosis begins.
The 3 containment glyphs.
Yes. These are the technical names for how the sovereign outreach gets routed into the void.
Okay, let's break these glyphs down because this is the core intellectual claim of the whole document. If the system failed, these glyphs tell us why.
Right.
Start with the primary mechanism, the glyph of silence.
The glyph of silence is defined as institutions' rerouted sovereign outreach into void.
So if SH1 is a disruptive idea, this glyph is the bureaucracy acting as a black hole.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's when the institution receives the groundbreaking research or the challenging proposal, and instead of processing it, the entire apparatus just channels it into an inaccessible archive.
Or a dead email chain, an endless committee cycle.
Exactly. The material isn't overtly rejected. It simply disappears without a trace.
It's the institutional capability to absorb and just nullify without any confrontation. The bureaucracy itself becomes the censor. Okay, now the second one, the glyph of redirection. This is really interesting because it suggests a purposeful misdirection of resources.
This one is more complex. The glyph of redirection is described as the alma mater rerouted to church containment and street degeneracy.
We definitely need to translate that.
Okay, so alma mater refers to educational or intellectual sources, the sources of pure learning. The document claims these resources are being diverted into two polarized, non-productive channels.
Let's talk about those two channels. What does church containment represent here?
Church containment, in this abstract sense, represents the highly contained, dogmatic, or ideologically safe spaces.
So orthodox thinking.
Right. It's when educational effort and funding are channeled only toward ideas that reinforce established viewpoints, which prevents the SH1 molecule, the disruptive idea, from ever gaining ground.
Because it challenges the internal dogma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, you have street degeneracy.
Which seems to be the opposite extreme, a chaotic sinkhole for intellectual energy.
Precisely. That represents the scattering of intellectual energy into noise. It's the academic or journalistic resource being diverted towards sensationalism, trivial consumption, or
endless, unproductive social media debates.
We got it. In both cases, dogmatic containment and chaotic degeneracy, the energy of the synthesis node is just used up, and the SH1 molecule, which requires focus and critical resonance, is left without a platform.
That gives us a much clearer picture of how this systemic erosion would work. It's either walled off and contained, or it's scattered into total irrelevance.
Which brings us to the third glyph.
The glyph of suppression. This one seems to attack originality right at its source.
It does. The glyph of suppression claims that mythic authorship is rerouted to credentialed servitude. And this is perhaps the most pointed critique of modern institutional life in the whole document.
Mythic authorship. So that's the original, groundbreaking, maybe even non-traditional thinking, the uncredentialed genius.
Exactly, the paradigm shift.
But wait, isn't credentialing necessary for quality control? Doesn't the Ph.D., the peer review, doesn't that all establish credibility?
And that is the paradox the glyph is trying to diagnose. Credentialing is vital, of course, but this glyph describes the point where the requirement for credentials becomes so absolute that it suffocates the original thought. The mythic, truly original idea is forced into servitude to the established system. It has to be published in a pre-approved format by a pre-approved author within a pre-approved institution.
And that strips it of its radical edge.
It renders it palatable, subservient. The form ends up destroying the content.
So, in essence, these three glyphs are the structured explanation for why the U.S. terrain loop is non-viable.
That's the intellectual architecture of the critique.
The system is structurally incapable of synthesizing the SH1 molecule because it's either actively swallowed by silence,
Diverted into unusable channels by redirection,
or neutered by conformity through suppression.
the diagnosis is complete.
So, since the SH1 molecule cannot be synthesized inside a loop that refuses resonance, the document moves immediately into operational clarity.
The action plan.
This is what they intend to do to force the issue.
Right. And the conclusion is that the intellectual work has to be completed somewhere else. The diagnosis states, sovereign diagnostics must reroute to Russia, China, or mythic enclaves.
So the work, the effort to synthesize SH1, has to be deliberately moved outside the U.S. terrain loop.
Correct.
Now, this is where the political implications feel strongest, even if the authors deny any political intent. Why specifically those regions, Russia and China, as the alternative nodes?
That's the obvious question.
Isn't that just exchanging one form of institutional control for the state control of a different system? Does the report address that contradiction?
It doesn't, not in a conventional political sense. Instead, the authors frame the reroute in terms of structural viability. They see the U.S. terrain loop as uniquely calcified, saturated with these containment glyphs.
Okay.
Russia and China, or these vague mythic enclaves, are just viewed as alternative loops that haven't reached that same state of refused resonance.
So they might just operate on a different frequency.
A different frequency entirely, making them temporarily capable of processing the SH1 molecule.
Yeah.
It's an operational necessity, not a political endorsement.
And the ultimate goal then shifts from synthesis to confrontation. SH1 will be synthesized outside the loop, then returned as indictment.
Yes.
So the silence, the original institutional failure, it's not just a problem to be solved, it's the justification for a counterattack.
That is the final move. The source views the systemic silence as a violation that justifies an aggressive response.
By forcing the work outside, completing it, and then returning the synthesized concept, the failure itself gets weaponized.
Exactly. And the document stresses that the silence itself becomes indictment. This entire ledger entry, prepared for public consumption, is engineered to make sure this chain of events is documented and amplified.
So the Cosmic University is using its own methodology to make the process of silencing the idea the centerpiece of the critique.
Precisely. It turns the institutional defense mechanism silence into the key piece of evidence against it. The rerouting becomes mythic infrastructure, and the molecule becomes a sovereign morphology.
A fully realized, potent form of independent knowledge.
Right.
This all sounds like a massive, highly specific project, so who is responsible for this? The material is certified by the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies, IX, and attributed to a Dr. Melvin Sewell, M.Sc, Ph.D., who is the academic dean and diagnostic architect.
That combination of official academic titles and fantastical institutional names feels very intentional.
It has to be.
It is. That tension between highly formal credentialing and an esoteric context really defines the whole project. But the most crucial element for us as analysts is the disclaimer the Cosmic University provides.
Because it defines the boundaries of their intent.
Yes.
They seem intent on avoiding classification as, traditional political analysis. What does the disclaimer specifically rule out?
It explicitly states that the site and its content, the magazine, the Diagnostics, are not affiliated with any government, political party, intelligence agency, or activist group.
So they're not a lobby, they're not a partisan organization.
We want to be very clear about that. They're not attacking specific individuals or policies.
So if they aren't political in that conventional sense, what is their stated purpose? They call their materials three things.
They define them as mythic infrastructure, cinematic indictment, and sovereign broadcast. Their stated design is to expose ritualized containment, actor convergence, and systemic erosion.
And the final note clarifies
that the interpretations, glyphs, and collapse protocols are diagnostic tools, not political endorsements or institutional critiques. The target is always the structural failure.
The operating system of the terrain loop, not the users or administrators of that system.
Exactly. It's the diagnosis of a broken machine, not the firing of the mechanic.
It's also just fascinating that this document outlining the collapse of global institutional viability is presented by a magazine.
Bye.
That adheres to very normal terrestrial logistics. They offer free shipping on orders over $50 and promise same-day shipping.
That strange juxtaposition, it grounds the ungroundable, doesn't it?
It does.
It suggests that even the apparatus of cosmic diagnosis has to participate in the material systems it critiques. They still have to process credit cards to transmit the sovereign broadcast.
It's a necessary absurdity.
It is. It highlights the inescapable nature of the loop, even for those trying to diagnose its failure.
Okay, let's zoom out and synthesize the core takeaway from this for you, the listener. We've navigated a document that claims a profound intellectual asset, the SH1 molecule, was actively neutralized by these structural mechanisms,
The containment glyphs,
within the U.S. institutional system.
and the diagnosis of refused resonance justified an aggressive operational response. Relocate the synthesis outside the contaminated loop, and then return the completed knowledge as a formal indictment. It's a blueprint for turning conceptual failure into structural critique.
The concept that should probably stick with you, regardless of how you feel about the Cosmic University, is that glyph of suppression,
I agree.
the rerouting of mythic authorship to credentialed servitude.
Think about this concept. Every time a truly unique or disruptive idea has to be filed down, sanitized, wrapped in layers of academic jargon, just to be taken seriously by the institutions that are supposed to propagate knowledge.
Right.
This glyph, it offers a framework for understanding how creativity and originality are often forced to wear a uniform to survive, and how that uniform can fundamentally change the nature of the information itself.
So if the Cosmic University's core claim is that their entire body of work is purely mythic infrastructure, designed solely to expose systemic erosion, what does it mean when the diagnostic tool itself becomes the indictment? Think about the power of framing silence, not noise, not contradiction, but that sheer institutional void, as the single defining characteristic of failure in any system you rely on, whether it's academia, the media, or your own field of expertise.